Welcome to my short recap of Game 2 of the 2023 FIDE World Women's Chess Championship. Now, as we saw yesterday, the two women got a draw in Game 1, and since I can't hide it on the screen here, I'll go ahead and say that they got a draw in Game 2 as well. You can see the 1/2 and 1/2. This time, the defending champion played with the white pieces and the challenger had the black pieces. Now, I know I can't compete with all the other big names doing recaps of these. That was a joke. As far as I can tell, none of the other big name chess YouTubers are doing any recaps or any coverage whatsoever of this event, which I find a little startling because they all profess to want to encourage women in chess, and many of them are women. And almost all of them are more qualified to go through these games than I am, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try to figure out what happened in this game. I do know from the game review here on Lichess that both players played with 97% accuracy. Neither player had any inaccuracies, mistakes, blunders, nothing. According to the little graph that comes up when you run the game review on Lichess, there were a couple of points at which each player had a slight chance to push their advantage one way or the other, and I'm just going to advance to those points and try to figure out what the engine is saying that they should have played instead. I'm going to open up the book here so I can follow out the opening. The defending champ opened with d4, which I have played extensively, so I understand that this is the Queen's Gambit, and that's the Queen's Gambit declined. White played knight to f3, and black responded with knight to f6, which is still the Queen's Gambit declined. There have been quite a few games that reach this exact position, and after here, though, we're now in the semi-Tarrasch version of the Queen's Gambit declined, according to this book here. I think I have reached this exact position before, and I'm never sure if I'm supposed to leave those pawns there, or if I'm supposed to capture one or capture the other one. But it looks like the c pawn capturing the d pawn is the most commonly played move here. And according to the engine, that is one of the two best moves. The defending champ played the other of the two best moves, which was e3. And then after black plays knight to c6, we're in a completely symmetrical position, which is now transposed from the Queen's Gambit declined semi-Tarrasch into the Tarrasch defense symmetrical variation. And I don't know that I've reached this exact position before, but it looks pretty complicated. There's lots of tension between these pawns. And now it definitely looks like, according to the engine and the database here, it looks like the c-pawn should be taking the d-pawn at this point, and that is what the defending champ played. Now I'm just going to click through the next several moves until I get to a point where it looks like one of the players had a slight advantage, but then let it trickle away. Okay, right here after 15 moves, the graph shows a slightly larger advantage than Stockfish is showing. This is just 0.4, which isn't that significant, I don't think, even at the Grandmaster level. The engine says white should take this. It's the only move that maintains the 0.4. I don't know that that's what I would play in this position, because once this pawn captures back, which they could capture back with either the pawn or the rook, if the rook captured back, then there would be a rook on this open file, which it already is on it, but it would not be an open file if the pawn got in front of it. So since you've already moved the rook over there, I don't know if it does look like the engine says that they would capture with the rook. But even if they captured with the pawn, then black would have two pawns here together to go up against this pawn. So I'm not sure why it's such a big advantage for white to take here. It's not that big of an advantage, but it's the only move that stays above 0, according to this engine lines up at the top. The second best move, according to that engine, is to bring this bishop all the way back here to f1, which I guess from there it would help guard this g2 pawn, but I'm not sure what else it would do other than continuing to patrol the diagonal that it's already on. But there is definitely no point in trying to continue pinning this knight since there's really nothing behind it. I mean, there is the rook back there, but you're not going to get that rook, right? As long as the knight is there. And especially since that piece is guarded twice. So that's why I don't understand why the defending champ played bishop to a4. Because that looks like you're just asking to be attacked again here with b5. And then, of course, yes, you're on a different diagonal now, but you're on a much shorter diagonal than you would have been before if you had played back here like the engine had suggested as the second best move. Of course, you wouldn't be on any diagonals at all if you had taken the knight, which it said was the best move. So yeah, I don't understand why that was the best move, taking the knight, and I don't understand why the defending champ moved it back here. I do understand the bishop to f1 move, and I think it said the third best move was bishop to d3 earlier. But moving it back to a4 invited the b5 move, which is what the challenger played. So now the bishop has to move again. The engine says she can come back to b3 or c2 and it'll be okay. The third best move would be counted as an inaccuracy, which would be taking the knight over here. But the champ played one of the two better moves. But now black has a slight advantage if they'll play g5. It's the only move that, according to the engine, that gives black the slight advantage here that the engine says that they have, which is to play g5, which is to move this bishop. Bishop only has one place to go at that point, which is g3. where it will be facing off with the other dark squared bishop, and the engine says that they would take, and then you would take back with the pawn. Well, the challenger did play g5, and of course there's only one move here that's not a mistake, and that's moving to g3, which she did. And here's another point that the players didn't play what looks like the obvious move. To me, it looks like it would be obvious to take here to mess up this pawn structure, but I guess it's not that important that the h-pawn moves over, since there's no heavy pieces coming down the h-file. I'm also interested that the engine says the second best move is to play knight to a5. Okay, well apparently I read the move list wrong. The challenger did take here with the bishop. And if you saw the little box pop up right behind my camera view, that's the player's database on Lichess. This exact position has been reached before, but not by grandmasters. These are 1800 rated players that have reached this exact position before after 18 moves. That's interesting. And of course you are going to take back with the h-pawn here. The f-pawn is not nearly as good according to the engine, and also it doesn't seem like it would be because it would be exposing your king to that diagonal. So she took back with the h-pawn. And black still has a very slight advantage here, but according to the graph, she let it slip away over the next few moves. Queen to b6 is the best move here according to the engine, and that's what the challenger played. But you saw the evaluation drop from 0.6 to minus 0.3. It's 0.6, and saying you get 0.6 if you play over here, and she did that, but now it's just 0.3. White needs to play a4 now, which I'm not sure exactly why. I guess if you took, you could take with the knight and be challenging the queen again. But it also looks like you'd want to do something about this d-pawn, because right now, black is hitting that pawn twice, and you're only defending it once, whereas playing a4 doesn't help defend that. It says they wouldn't attack it at that point. It says they would play bishop to g4 after you played a5. Well, white played their third best move, which was to go queen to d2, but I'm trying to figure out why that's so good. It's still, I guess you do currently have a defender on this already, so they're not going to take it. But what does queen to d2 do? Are you trying to line up behind this? Let's back up. It says the second best move, if she didn't play a4, was to play queen to d3. Now I think, get that one because it protects the knight in the event of this bishop coming over here to g4, which the engine is recommending as a possible next move for black. But queen to d2 doesn't do that, so I'm not sure why queen to d2 was the move that she chose, or why it's the third most recommended move by the engine. But that's what she played. And bishop to g4 is the next move by black. It's the best one, and that's what she played. And now the engine says, yeah, you should have played queen to d3. That's the best move. Or you can defend that knight by bringing the bishop back to d1 and defend it this way. Or you can just go ahead and take the rook down there. That's what white did, which is a third best move, which is a forcing move. It forces them to take back with their rook. And now you're supposed to line this rook up behind your queen. That's the best move for white here. Now that I don't understand. I do understand this bishop coming this way again to defend this knight from the light squared bishop. Although, I guess if the light squared bishop captured, you can always capture back with this g-pawn, and then you could move your king up there behind him in this little nook you've created. But rook to d1, I'm not sure I understand. It says that as the best move, but you can't be seriously lining up here, can you? Okay, I think I do understand it, because if this bishop does take and you take back with your pawn, then that knight's no longer guarding the d-pawn, and they still have two pieces attacking it over here, so the rook would help line up with that, with the queen. Okay, I think I do understand rook to d1. That is what the defending champ played, and black still has a slight advantage here, and again it's suggesting knight to a5. This is just like in the first game. There was a point at which the computer wanted the knight to go over there to the edge, and I'm not sure why, other than maybe coming in here to c4 later, but I don't see that later down this line. No, at no point is that knight heading to c4. Maybe it's the threat of the knight heading to c4, from which point it would be threatening both the b-pawn and the queen. Okay, yeah, the engine does say if they played knight to a5, then white would respond with b3, which would keep the knight from going in there. And of course, b3 would be protected by this bishop, so the knight couldn't take that. Okay, I think I understand that. The second best move here for black is rook to c8, which I guess puts a rook on an open file, but it's already on an open file. And this one is much more open. But over there, I guess, once there was an exchange here of some kind, then that rook would be pointed down here, which the queen wouldn't be defending that bishop anymore after some sort of thing here, and the rook would end up down on the second rank. That's the only thing I can think of why rook to c8 is best, or king to g7. But instead, black played king to f8, which takes the advantage near back to 0 again. And I will just say, because I've gone through all the rest of the moves at least once, that the game never got beyond +1 or -1. Black maintained an advantage for the next several moves, and I'll just run through them here. The queen did go up to d3, the pawn threatened the knight, and it moved over. The queen came up. They traded queens here. Black took that pawn, which looked like a free pawn, but then the rook moves back to protect the bishop. Knight swings around, bishop attacks the pawn in the middle, which is already defended by the knight. I'm not sure what that bishop move was about, but I think it was one of the best ones. And after this, we're at zeros, and it stays at zeros for the rest of the game. Just turning off the engine so my computer doesn't overheat, but it looks like both players just played exactly what they were supposed to do for the rest of the game, traded off some pieces until they got down to a rook and light squared bishop endgame. Now here, I understand why you would move the rook over to threaten this pawn, because I guess, even though the other pawn is defending it, but now because their rook is attacking your bishop, you have to bring your rook back over to defend the bishop. I think you had to bring the rook over, because if you just move the bishop, then they're defending their pawn, and your rook is not doing anything over here except blockading it, I guess. Although at that point, you could have moved this pawn up maybe to threaten the rook, but then it could have just moved sideways, perhaps. Well, the challenger brought the rook back down to e1, so the defending champ put the rook back over there going after that pawn, and then they brought the rook back up and brought the rook back over, and they repeated moves to get a draw on move 40. Remember, move 40 is when they get their extra time, so just as they got their extra time, it was the threefold repetition, and the game ended in a draw. So even though there were a couple of things that I wasn't sure I understood, I think I got it. Pretty impressive play from both sides. I think I could have lost with either color in most of these positions, so it's pretty impressive. I don't have a schedule in front of me, so I don't know if game 3 is tomorrow morning or if there's a rest day now. I don't know how many games they go in a row before they get a rest day. I do know that there's only 12 games in this championship match as opposed to, I believe, 14 in the big one earlier this year. Either way, thank you for spending your time here, and I'll see you next time.